Hello everyone, this is Luke Myers, author of Gnostic Visions. I wanted to make a video here. This is actually my first video, and basically go over a little bit about my book, and help to kind of get the message out. For people who are new to the book Gnostic Visions, which you can obviously see here, the book was a research book. Basically uncovering evidence to identify how early Jewish and Christian Gnostic visionary rituals were being created. Anyone who knows anything about the mystical side of Christianity will know that in 1945 in the Egyptian desert a library was discovered that rivaled that of the Dead Sea Scrolls, actually far greater. Some people may not know about it. A lot of people seem to know about the Dead Sea Scrolls because it's gotten a lot more press. But the Gnostic Nag Hammadi library was of actually greater significance. The reason that it was of greater significance is because the library contained an ancient library of a sect of ancient Christianity which had been forbidden and banned by the Orthodox Catholic Christian Church. When Christianity took control of the Roman Empire in the 4th century, they banned all other religions, all other forms of Christianity that did not line up with their own. All other books that were not approved to go into the canon Bible were destroyed, hunted down, and burned and eradicated. The only place some of these books were believed to have existed was in the secret archives of the Vatican, which, as everyone should know, is under top secret lock and key. But then one day in 1945, the sands of the Egyptian desert, these books were uncovered. The books are absolutely remarkable. One of the books is called the Book of Thomas. Thomas was a disciple. But for some reason, the Book of Thomas did not appear in the Bible. The Book of Thomas is very similar to a sermon by Jesus Christ, just his teachings. It doesn't say what he did in his life. It doesn't talk about any of his miracles. It basically is just Jesus talking, teaching. That's the Book of Thomas. And there's the Book of Mary Magdalene. The Book of Mary Magdalene was also claimed to be a disciple, a female disciple. In the Bible, Mary Magdalene is mentioned as the prostitute that Jesus saved and gave mercy to. And we find out from the Gnostic Gospels that she was far more than that. That she was actually a follower of Jesus, and that she was a woman leader in the early church. She was also a Gnostic. So what is a Gnostic? A Gnostic, as defined by modern scholarship, is translated as someone who knows, someone who possesses knowledge or secret knowledge. But it's not just knowledge like I know the difference between red and green, or I know that the sky is blue, or 2 + 2 is 4. It is a knowledge of understanding. So it's kind of like a type of wisdom, if you will. It's knowledge through experience, to possess gnosis. You can read a book on how to drive, but until you actually drive, you do not possess the gnosis on driving. That would be a simple kind of explanation. The better way that it was put was Gnostics did not believe in God. They knew God. They knew in the existence of God. They were initiated into the physical reality of the divine. That is why Gnostic scriptures are so profound. Because we live in a world today where all of the major religions of the world, I am speaking primarily to Christianity, Islam, mainstream Judaism for that matter, Hinduism not as much, but even Hinduism and a little bit of Buddhism, but we'll say the mainstream Western religions are faith-based. They believe that God is unknowable pretty much, but wants to have a relationship with man. He loves man. But knowing God can only come through grace, through divine miracle, really. That man is separated from God from sin. And that's why nobody's experienced God. And if you want to know about God, you have to read the Bible, or you have to read the Torah, or you have to read the Quran. Because these men that were in this book are so holy, they're so sacred, we hold them up on a pedestal as the most profound of ancient people because they've actually experienced God. They have actually witnessed God, and God has spoken to them. They are the great prophets of God. And that is absolutely wonderful. And that is sacred and special. But they weren't the only people that met God or experienced God. Matter of fact, lots of people have, and the separation between us and God is not just an illusion, but it's not even necessary. Anybody today, if they truly, in their hearts of hearts, want to meet God, it is possible. I guarantee that can be done. All you have to do is have the desire and the will to meet God, and it can be done. And that's really the beauty of the 21st century, is particularly the access to the internet and the World Wide Web. Is the internet's this funny little box sitting on a table on our desk, and all the world's knowledge is inside this little box. You know, when the TV was first invented, people thought it was so funny that you have this little box and it plays shows and plays and entertains you. Well, now we have a little box that all the world's knowledge is right there at your fingertips. Any question you've ever had, you type it in this little keyboard, it goes into this little box and gives you an answer. 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, throughout pretty much any time in human history, such a thing would be the most profound miracle of anyone's understanding. Yet, in today's age, we take it for granted. We take for granted really the power of the internet, the World Wide Web of information that has been collected on the internet, and how much information is stored there, how much things you can find and uncover, how many books, how much research, how many things there are. Everything is on the internet, pretty much. And it's a great tool for researching and for gaining information. And I think as more and more people are awakening to this and learning and gaining a more rounded education from various sources, I think that the general awareness of some of these things is coming back up to the surface a little bit. And I think that is part of the fueling fire behind the Archaic Revival that Terence McKenna talked about. The Archaic Revival is basically a concept that was started in the early 90s by Terence McKenna, when the psychedelic revolution was really taking hold again after the 60s. For anybody who doesn't know anything about American or Western psychedelic culture, basically what happened is in the 1950s, a lot of scientists and academics were started exploring or writing academic papers on various mind-altering drugs. It started in the 50s with mescaline and the peyote cactus. In the early 60s, late 50s, it moved to psilocybin mushrooms, and there was a lot of professors and academic researchers who did research on psychedelic mushrooms and their spiritual, mystical effects, their therapeutic properties, psychological therapeutic properties. And then came the 60s, and then came Timothy Leary and the whole public fiasco and LSD, the CIA actually manufacturing LSD and dumping it into society via various drug dealers to actually experiment with what would happen if this was mass-produced in a society as a weapon. And then people got the formula, and people started producing LSD, and the whole 60s thing happened. But a lot of people didn't know, but they eventually gained the understanding that mind-altering compounds weren't anything new. They had been around for millennia, since humans climbed out of the trees. Even before that, even during the dinosaurs, there was probably psychoactive mushrooms and fungi and plants around, and the rise of the mammals only facilitated their high status or their relationship with man. But basically, drugs kind of went into hiding culturally There was no scientific research whatsoever. It was pretty much completely shut down for 30 years. And then, the party movement continued. I mean, the rave scene exploded in the 80s. Well, it really gained momentum in the 80s, exploded in the 90s. Movements like Burning Man started. People kept, growing their mushrooms and smoking their marijuana and doing all these things. So the counterculture, I should say, never died. It just went underground. And then, of course, the youth continued. The more people kept writing books, and it was alive, this underground movement. Terence McKenna came along in the 80s, and kind of came right at the time when rave culture and the counterculture was finding a new generation, finding the 80s generation, the 80s and 90s generation. And he started, basically him and his brother in the 70s went down to the Amazon, drank ayahuasca. They went to Mexico, ate magic mushrooms, had these mind-boggling experiences, and he wrote a bunch of books about it. Got a bunch of attention within the counterculture, and people were hungry. They wanted, some new stories, some new things. They were like, wow, what's going on here with these mushrooms? What's going on here with this DMT, this ayahuasca? And it got a bunch of people interested. Around the same time, Alex Gray started to gain prominence as a painter, as a visionary art, very religious, mystical, really capturing the consciousness of the New Age movement. So you had all these things kind of swirling around in this cultural soup, and in the United States, and definitely I'm sure going on a little bit in Europe as well, although I can't attest to what was going on in Europe as I don't live there. Basically, it was underground, and then it's now recently started to emerge, and there really is a cultural awakening happening, a revolution in understanding of not only the sacredness of nature and the plants, but I think a lot more people who are curious about and open-minded to these types of things now have access. I mean, if you will go on Netflix and you watch DMT, a spirit molecule, and you say that is the most amazing, or that's so interesting, that's the most interesting thing you've ever seen, or that is so fascinating, that's really curious, I want to know more. And you search online, read a little bit more about it, and then you find out, hey, I can go down to Iquitos, Peru, and I can go to a shamanism conference, or I can go on a shamanic retreat, stay, in one of these healing centers for, a week or 5 days or however long that the course is, and I can go through the ayahuasca experience. I can experience DMT. I can experience these mystical visionary states, and people are doing it. It's a silent movement, but it's a very big industry that's happening. It's moving, and I think that more and more people are becoming accepted of this type of spiritual tradition than used to be. And I think that that's really beneficial to society. I think that that's what's really helping to facilitate this growth, is the plant consciousness, the consciousness of God and nature are helping to evolve our society, and that this is only being a greater part of our future. As you all know, it's the early December 2012, December 21st is coming around the corner, and according to everyone in astrology who studies the stars and the energies, that is what's associated with astrology. The 2012 is supposed to mark a new beginning, a calendar change, and a new evolutionary stage, or a new awakening, or the end of the age is what we call it in Christianity. The end of the age is upon us. It's going to be marked in a few weeks. And that's why I feel I wanted to get this out here. I'm going to be making a few more videos over the next coming weeks, going up into 2012. and just basically continuing to talk about these